Hi, everyone. Here we are again, Sunday afternoon global. So glad you could make it. If you're here, not too many people yet, but that's okay. People will gradually get in here. We have Dell's Reef. Dell was first today. Hope you're doing well, Dell. I understand you're working. Andrew Hudson. Hey, Andrew, got your email, and I have to remind myself the details, and then maybe we can talk about that. And hey, Adrian Mitchell, thanks for joining in. Yeah, I don't have a lot of news yet. Maybe I'll start with just some general kind of announcements until we get a few more people in here. I've been doing this daily dose thing. I absolutely love it. It's been 10 episodes so far. That's 10 days in a row, except for one day when I had the video about the vacuum cleaner. And so 11 days in a row, I've put a video, actually 12 when you count the video for this. I put a video out, and as much as I love doing it, there are a whole bunch of other things around here that are not getting done because of that. It takes an average of probably 2 to 2.5 hours out of each day to do that. And right now, things are starting to get really busy around the house, getting ready for winter, and we've been spending our time outside. And so I've decided to cut back on the daily dose videos. And as much as I love doing them, I don't have time. So I think I'll go weekly. And probably, maybe 3-4 years ago, I used to do a weekly Tuesday point and shoot update. So Tuesday's a good day for me to publish a video because it seems to be a day of the week when I have some time. So I'm going to, my audio's good. Okay, hey, Scotty Damron, Mr. DKH, Lee White, welcome you guys. Drum Clock, hey, how's it going? Thanks, Adrian. I'm actually sitting in some light for a change. So I think I'll go weekly because what I can do is I can capture some footage each day. I can keep the videos to a reasonable length so it doesn't turn into a half an hour and kind of make it a little more concise. And that way I'll be able to get at least a video out a week that keeps everybody caught up with what's going on. And also for me, it documents what's going on and when things happen. So I'm going to try that for a while because the videos, they really do, there's this like sense of pressure. I like to try and publish them at 5:45 every day, just to be consistent with it. And there have been a couple times when I haven't been able to do that. And I do feel a sense of sort of anxiety for not getting that done. So I think we'll go weekly. I don't know whether I'll start this Tuesday. Tuesday might not work out as the day of the week to use. We'll have to wait and see. So that's one announcement. Daily doses are now going to be weekly updates. And the second thing is the same kind of thing applies to the live streams. It takes probably, however long that is, you can double it and add an hour. And that's how much time it takes. And this time of year is really hard for me. I just find myself behind the 8 ball all the time when it comes to time. So I've decided to go once a month on Sunday, the last Sunday of every month, just so that it's easy to remember and not confusing. And we'll see how that goes maybe till the end of the year. So for the next couple of months, 1 p.m. Eastern on the last Sunday of the month. And I'll see if my time frees up. I might just throw in a random Saturday night, depending what else is going on. But that's sort of to get a bit of balance in my life. You'll probably see more frequent update videos once this whole tank situation is sorted out. Yeah, we've probably got enough people I can talk about that. Say hi. Please give us some good tank news, Scotty says. Yeah, well, Freestyle Traveler, hello. Ooh, look at this. All new life support setup and running, a new 120-gallon tank. That's awesome. Hey, MB Reef. So here's what's happening with the tank. I think now's as good a time as any. The stands are done. They went out for repowder coating on Tuesday of this past week, and they were finished on Thursday. The company that we got to do it has a really good reputation, and they do large-scale projects. So they fit this in ahead of 3 float plane frames that they have coming in tomorrow. So I'm super glad about that. The only concern I have at this point is that the invoice got sent to the tank builder. And the way my mind works right at this moment, I'm thinking, okay, so we can't pick them up until they're paid for. And if he decides to hold off paying for them, thinking that he's going to buy himself more time to finish the tank, because I can't use the tank without a stand, right? He's wrong. It's not going to happen. If that happens, I will pay for them and the tank's going back. He actually has 5 working days this week, Monday to Friday. From what I understand from the LFS, the glass has been sent out for polishing, and as soon as it's done, it's going to be shipped. I don't know where it's going to be shipped because nobody's told me. I haven't heard that it's been shipped if they're planning on sending it here. And I know from Calgary, unless they put it overnight air with FedEx or somebody that does that, they're not going to get here this week because normal shipping from the West takes a while. It's like 3,000, however many away. So yeah. So I am not optimistic that the tank that's in my garage will get fixed in time and come into my house. I have a feeling that what's going to happen if I can arrange it is I will keep the stand. I'll pay for the powder coating job that was done, and I'll just order a new tank. And then at least we'll have the stand ready to go. And who knows what will happen with the tank. Maybe I'll get lucky and it can be slotted in somewhere, so I'm not waiting till January. But at this point, my optimism is zero that this is going to be, this tank that's in my garage is going to be repaired, because he is still planning on sending someone from Calgary to here, 3,000 miles away, to do it. And if he hasn't booked a flight yet, it's going to cost him a fortune. There's just so many ways this could get derailed. And I don't know if you've been following all of the pandemic stuff, but the province of Alberta in Canada has a dire situation, health emergency wise. They've called in the military for help. They're running out of space in ICUs to the point where now they're having to triage and decide who gets to go in ICU. So it is really bad. And with all of that going on, that could even derail things. Who knows? So he's had a month. Well, not yet. He's got 5 more days left of the month, and I'm giving him also the Friday, which is the 1st of October. And, I hope it gets done. I really do. But I'm not the least bit optimistic. So, worst case scenario, pay for the stand coating, and I will get a refund of whatever the balance is. I don't even care if the fish store makes an arrangement with a different tank builder and just pays them directly for it. I don't have to make any money on this. I don't need to have cash back, as long as I get a tank and it doesn't cost me any more than it will with this stand. So that's where things stand today. I mean, it'd be great if they would cover the cost of the stand for me. I thought they were going to. Instead, the invoice got sent to the tank builder. So as soon as I found that out, I thought, okay, that's it. It's not going to happen. Excuse me. So that's my tank update. 14 people here now. Cool. MB Reef. Oh, thanks, Adrian. I appreciate the feedback. And it's, sometimes I get a little ambitious, and that daily thing, I was really enjoying that because of having to think differently in how I did the tasks in order to capture them on video. And I'm guessing at some point it will kind of peter out a little bit, because I'm not going to show you dosing iodine every week. Once is enough. But as things go on, and as things happen with the evolution of the sump downstairs and the new frag tank and everything else, I will have small updates. So that, that justifies once a week, I think. Yeah. Hey, Marcus's Reef, welcome. Yeah, I know, right? Seems shady. Why wait till the last minute? And honestly, this has been my point all along. Excuse me. It took him 7 months to do this, and right from the beginning of this month that I gave him to fix it, the LFS guys were here on a Tuesday. I still hadn't heard any confirmation or anything by Friday. So that's 3 days later. 10% of the available 30 days was gone without anything happening. I don't know if he works weekends. I would think if you make it a priority, you might want to work weekends. In the meantime, I've heard of other people getting tanks that he's built, and that's awesome. I don't wish them any ill or any kind of a problem. I just wonder, after all of this, what is going on? And still no explanation as to why it took so long. So, yeah. Hey, Ryan Shackleton. Cool. Oh, yeah, that reminds me. Ryan says he's going to stop in an hour. SPS Reefkeeper or SPS Keeper. SPS Reefer. I think that's it. That reminds me, I do have a hard stop today in about 2.5 hours, around 3:30, because of family plans. So that's the kind of thing that's starting to happen. And I think as things settle down a little bit even with the pandemic, and we're not at home as much, that's also going to have an impact on the available time. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I really missed you guys last year when I took the couple of months off because of internet problems where I was living while the house was being built. And it's been so nice to get back to that. So we'll see what happens. I may just reach a point where I want to drop a Saturday back in. Maybe we have one Saturday, one Sunday. We'll see. Did the tank builder no, he didn't. Nope, got no apology. And my plan was, if anyone actually did come to do this repair work in time, I have fragile stickers left over from when we moved. I was going to get a nice box, wrap them up in bubble wrap, put them in the box, and wrap it up like a gift for the tank builder, and give him some fragile stickers, because he doesn't believe in fragile stickers. I don't know whether he thinks that it's a target, it makes something a target, some mythical land where couriers actually treat cargo that's identified as fragile worse. I don't know. The whole thing makes zero sense to me. It just really, it's baffling. It's really baffling. So anyhow, that's good that we were able to talk about that right at the beginning, so that anyone who catches the replay, you'll know the story right at the start and won't have to randomly check through to find out if you're interested in finding out. One good thing is I got my lights set up, and I posted a picture on Instagram of the lights turned on, just to say they're set up, and I programmed them. And I have to say, this Orfec Atlantic, well, I guess Orfec's app in general is probably the best app I've run across to set up lights. So easy, so straightforward. I did some investigating and found a couple of suggested schedules, programs. Excuse me. It's that season, allergies again. And one thing that I found was there was a study done, I think in Japan was where the data was gathered. And the original study was done about lighting coral, artificial lighting for coral. And the outcome of that was corals can easily be damaged by too much light. And we know that. The question is, how much is too much? And that depends on adaptation, where they're from, what type of tissue they have, and all of that, what type of coral it is. And the second thing that struck me when I was reading the translation of it is that the level of light that they get should be consistent to duplicate the sun. So you know how we get these programs where we ramp up and then we do a curve? Apparently the ramping up is fine, It's the curve part. The curve should be a plateau through about 10 hours and then ramp down again for an hour to kind of replicate sunrise and sunset up and down. And it also, Orfec's advice is that unless you're an expert, 12 hours should be a maximum photo period. The study also said 0 light at night. Don't even be tempted to use moonlight settings on lights, because the maximum amount of light that reaches corals in the tropic latitudes is somewhere between 0.2 and 1 lumen. So if you think about it, I've looked into it, and the average daylight bulb is anywhere between 200 and 450 lumens. So I don't know how far away you have to get that thing from your tank to create between 0.2 and 1 lumen. So, or how you would dim it down that low, because the thing about LEDs is that I think it's called pulse wave modulation. That's the mechanism behind dimming. So when they're on full, they don't flicker. But when you start dimming them, the way that less light is delivered is via reducing the on off, or is via turning that wave on and off. And that's the flicker. So yeah, so it was really, really interesting reading that. It was on one of the forums, I forget which. And so I've taken the advice that somebody had there who said they have super good results. And every channel, there are 4 channels, and every channel on the light is set at 100% for 10 hours, with ramping at the beginning and the end for 1 hour. And the other thing about that is that in the app, or in the Orfec programming design for these lights, they have the availability of what they call clouds, soft clouds and heavy clouds. And so part of this person's that I copied, part of their schedule includes heavy clouds. And what that is, I thought it was, the lights would dim down, which they do, but only for 5 minutes and then 15 minutes on. So 15 minutes on, 5 minutes heavy clouds throughout the entire photo period. And from the Japanese study, what that does is it gives the corals time to release the oxidation that they get from the light, from the biological processes of the zooxanthellae in their tissue that produces waste. And these periods of low light allow the coral to expel that waste. So I found it hugely interesting. And I had read about this some time ago, but this is a more recent study. So all of this comes out of, setting up the Orfec lights. And I checked yesterday, and I've got it all set correctly, so that the bar lights come on one side in the back, then the Atlantics come on, they ramp up, and while they're ramping up, the bar lights come on at the front and the other side. And I did a time lapse so that I could see the order in which things turned off, and so that's how it's going to work. Because during the day you can't really see. So that's a good thing, because it made me nervous, the idea of setting up the gateway, because you know how I've complained about Wi-Fi issues and how I always get confounded by things that don't have buttons. And so I'm really impressed with how quick and easy it was to set up this gateway and to install the Wi-Fi and get it hooked up to Wi-Fi. So I have the gateway in my kitchen, and it's plugged into a plug underneath my kitchen island. And the gateway came with an Ethernet cable to plug into the router to get it set up. So I did all that. So now it's unplugged from the router. It's strictly operating on Wi-Fi. And if it works for a week or so, then I will mount it underneath my kitchen counter in a little bracket or something like that, and just leave it there. And so we'll see what happens. I'm very, very encouraged by being able to do that so easily. So yeah, the only thing is, I mean, it looks nice, but I won't have a clue what the par is or what it even is going to make my tank look like until I actually have a tank with water in it. So could be months before I know. Too much work to put stickers on. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Hey, Lorena, welcome. The Red Sea lights have a flat level apart from ramping up and going down unless you program some clouds. Yeah. And I had always misunderstood the function of clouds because I assumed that clouds were that you had to set up the timing for the clouds, or that they were just something that came on and stayed on unless you addressed it. And when I read about how they actually do work, I thought, okay, when you look at the study data and the conclusions that they drew on what corals require in order to function throughout the day and not get overlit, it made total sense that the clouds would be a program, and having it already in the app means I don't have to mess around with those little time things, and just made it so much easier. Ooh. Oh yeah, Andrew, I'm just reading your email again. I remembered you talking about it's hard to learning to text. I know. I'm going to be 65 on my next birthday, and I am so proud of what I've learned about how to use this thing, but I'm useless when it comes to Instagram features. I know how to make a post and comments and stuff like that. And Facebook is just beyond me. I find it so confusing and so aggravating that I basically am on a couple of local groups about the town I live in, and that's it. I've tied up the Reefgrrl page on Facebook so nobody else can grab it, but I've turned everything off so that it doesn't get used without me paying attention to it. I don't want people to go on there and leave messages that I never see because I don't check it, and I don't want somebody squatting on it either. So that's why I tied that up. So Andrew, here's where maybe we've got people in the chat. We've got 22 people here now. Might be able to help you. Here's Andrew's email. He bought a Red Sea Max Nano and is trying to decide how to cycle it. It's only 16.5 gallons. We'll have some Marco Rock. Ooh, I like your design idea. And some sand. He could just fill it with water from the other system and drop a well-cured bioblock in the rear sump. If I did that, would I still have to feed the system or the bacteria on the block? Oh, I see. Yeah, you would still have to feed the system or the bacteria on the block would die off. Or do I fill it with fresh water, cycle, and some fish food, and when it's ready, put the block in when I add a fish? A lot of things to consider. Yeah, so if anybody wants to chime in on that, it is kind of a hard decision to make because I had the same thing with the frag tank. I used 1/3 water from the observation tank because most of the coral that's going in the frag tank's coming from there. And then I used 2/3 water from new salt water. And that's what I think dropped the potassium because I didn't I didn't test the saltwater vat. It was a new batch. And I guess I should do that before I use it again. But I think that's what dropped the potassium down to 390, or is it 380? But anyway, it's at a safe level. And then I thought, well, like, what do I put in here to maintain it? Like, because you know what happens with salt water, if you just leave it circulating, it will have life of its own at some point just from things falling in from the air and particulates and things like that. So I took a media bag from the 150-gallon section of the sump and put it in there in the corner, and I shook it up really good. And luckily, it had a whole bunch of detritus in it, which is good because it's food for whatever bacteria does start to develop in there or is living on the media that's in the bag. I think it's C-Chem Matrix. And the water did get cloudy for a couple of days. And in the next update, I'll show you guys where it's cleared up. It took about 36 hours to clear up after I put the green machine on it. So that thing is working. It's always done that for me. I know it hasn't worked for some people, but with that little bit of haze on the water, it was definitely noticeable, but it certainly wasn't severe. It's cleared up now, and I've put coral in. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm thinking maybe later on tonight when I get home, I might move more coral over, because part of that process is going to be dipping the coral. Lynn Reef Nerd suggested that, and she was reading my mind, because after I found that massive flatworm, I thought, oh, who knows what else is on here? It could be bacteria. I have lost a few corals to RTN, and one or two of them are showing STN, the rapid tissue necrosis and the slow tissue necrosis. So I don't want that to get any worse. I don't want to lose any more. I think I lost about 7 altogether out of maybe 20 that I had. And, that's a lot. So, it's a struggle trying to decide what to do. So I just thought I would go ahead and try and maintain the water parameters and see what happened. And that little bacteria bloom is the only thing I've seen. Because, of course, the other thing you think when you see haze in the water is possible ammonia. And I tested for ammonia, but there was none. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if anybody has any comments about that. Yeah. So what else happened this week? Let me think now. I've been running my skimmer only during the day, because the last phosphate test on the system was 0.06, and I don't want to bottom out the phosphates any more than that. And we've talked about how a reef tank goes through, like, basically the first year, its biology evolves, and you do reach a point where, as long as your nutrient input is balanced by export, and I have a huge mass of chaeto in the upper 50-gallon section, the shallow 50 I call it, once you get that balance, your nutrients become more sensitive. The levels become more sensitive to change. So that's where you run into issues with phosphate bottoming out, because especially if the corals are growing, they're using that phosphate. And if they're doing well and you've got alkalinity for them, calcium, magnesium, and everything's good, and they're displaying growth, which mine are. In fact, one of my Montipora is actually encrusted on the side of the stock tank above the frag rack. So if I took the frag rack away, it would stay there, I think. So I'm not going to try it, but everything's growing well. Lost a couple of things for reasons I think I know. But yeah, so after this long, it's been running since late January, and it's had coral in since early March. It's starting to reach that point of equilibrium where the processing of nutrients and the biology of it is balancing out the nitrate and phosphate. So this is where I really have to watch and be careful they don't drop too low. So that's why I'm still experimenting with how much no-pox I use, only 3 times a week, only a little bit, and the Elimifos Rapid, and I also have some of the 2 little fishies, Fosban L, I think, when I run out of the Elimifos. So keeping an eye on that stuff just to make sure I don't mess it up. So yeah, that's what I've been busy with now. And we have Ryan here, SPS Reefer. Hey, Insane Reefer, how's it going, Oscar? All right, I'm going to bring Ryan in. Save you guys from listening to me all afternoon. Oh, is there one missing at the front here, Ryan?
No, I've just redone the skate yesterday. So I've turned the rocks round. So it's a much taller skate now.
Oh boy.
Last
okay.
time.
Yeah, I know. I thought it looked different. Sorry, I had to turn my streaming thing on, and I saw a fish in there.
Yeah. Where is it? Oh, there he is.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you decided on a copper band. What made you decide on that? Beautiful.
They're one of my favourite fish. I've always wanted a copper band, so where's he gone? There he is. So yeah.
And how long have you had him?
About 3 weeks, something like that. Feed him really well before I took him home. I asked the shop to feed him in front of me, and as soon as they put the food in, he were straight on it. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm just a little bit scared of the camera. He doesn't like me going near the tank with my phone, but try and get a quick shot.
So are you going to add some Aptasia to feed them?
No, I don't want any activity. Nothing like that. Oh,
That's
dear.
funny.
Yeah, he's doing really well, so that's good. He's the
Cool.
only fish in the tank as well, So
Yep.
he's been in amongst all the corals at the top there, just checking for things, and
Yep.
so yeah,
And so
Cooper we've called it.
Trooper. Oh, that's
Cooper.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's nice. Here, I'm just going to bring Alex in so he can chat with you too.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, Alex, what's happening?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We're looking at Ryan's new aquascape. So, Ryan, I missed what you said at the beginning because, of course, I forgot to turn my little hearing thing on. So you changed the scape?
I did. Yeah, I made it a lot taller because I just felt some of the colonies just wasn't getting the right light, so they've gone a little bit white on a couple of the sides. So, and I just weren't happy with the way the tank were going, so I thought I'll fancy a change. And since I've done this, they're looking a lot better. Like that one there was, I don't know if it's still there, but it was just a little bit of white on either side where it just wasn't getting the correct light. But since we've put him there, he's really starting to come back now.
Oh,
which is
nice.
really fantastic. I'll do a top-down view soon.
Have you removed any corals from here? It looks like you have fewer.
Yeah, we moved a few on. Yeah. So I'm just going to start building it. We're going to build another rock structure there, just as tall as this one, and then have a load more SPS as well. So we're going to do like an arch as well to join that one to the other rock structure. So that's in my plans for the next month or so.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah, but I just wanted to see how it'd look and how the corals would react as well, because I was a little bit worried if they were going to react bad, but they're actually looking a lot better.
Well, do you still have the rock that you removed to do this? Is that what you're going to do?
No. That's actually the same rock that was in before. So I've just built it up on top. So it's the same two pieces of rock that was in before, but
okay.
So we've
just changed the orientation.
Yeah, it actually locks in the middle, so it's not going anywhere.
Right.
But they're just a lot higher now. They're a lot near the light. I've moved the power head just in the far corner there.
Yeah.
And I've put it on like a gyre mode, so they're getting really good flow across them, not directly at them.
Yeah.
And just so I'll do a top-down view. You see the flow in a minute. What I mean, but overall, we see good signs for them. They're certainly looking a lot better.
Nice. Yeah, Oscar, Insane Reefer, says you might want to consider bringing them down a little before they start growing out of the water.
Yeah. I'll just show you you see the flow when it comes on.
Yeah.
You'll see what I mean when the flow comes on. There you go.
Yep.
You see the flow.
Oh,
It's going right across them, right, not directly at them, which is important.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they're looking good.
Nice. I like the green base on the one that's kind of in the middle there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
That's a nice one. So yeah, I was a little bit frightened of changing things, especially SPS, but I had to do something. I just weren't happy with the way it was going. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're, I always think if you're responding to something in the tank and the changes that you make are limited, that's a good way to check whether it's something that can be helped by changing what you know what I mean, rather than changing a whole bunch of stuff all at once, kind of like a knee-jerk reaction, and I get the idea that you kind of take your time and assess before you do stuff.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about doing this for the last couple of weeks, but it was panicking me a little bit because it's like, well, the corals are looking really good. Do I really want to upset them or stress them out? And how is it going to go? So when I did it yesterday, the change, I was constantly looking over at the corals every half hour, just making sure they were fine. They've responded really well to it. Really have. Just get
nice.
so, yeah. That pink one there was the one that was in the stream last time I was on, but it's getting a lot of green now in its base. So it's actually looking really good.
Looks cool.
So, yeah. There's that one there. If I can get a view of that one, was that one there.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like it's hard to do when doing a top-down view.
Top-down is so hard because of the light.
It is. But yeah, that one there. That's the bubble gum now, so that's really starting to colour. That's like pink with like bluish tips.
Nice.
And yeah. So yeah. Touch wood, the move's gone well. Touch wood.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Andrew Hudson is wondering if they come out of the water when you do a water change.
I don't do water changes. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I keep forgetting that.
I don't bother with water changes. So still running the light at 80% on all the blues, and then I've just put a tiny little bit of white and a tiny little bit of red in there. You know, just it just shows the corals up a little bit rather than just normal blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the experiment that I'm going to be doing with adding more white light to my tank, because I have the bars around the outside and they're all blues. The two at the sides are just one color of blue, and the front and back are the Orifex, and they have multiple colors of blue. So it'll be in violet. So it'll be interesting to see whether I can get away with more white light from the two panel lights, because the blues will kind of tone it down and give that pop, right? So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like to run a bit of white rather than just all blue. I find it just washes some of the colours out, so if I put a bit of white in there, it shows them up.
Yeah, well, blue corals don't show up in blue light, do they?
No,
they don't look like anything.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's looking really good.
Looking good.
Happy.
So how long will you wait then before you put more rocks in?
Maybe a month or so. I'll just let the tank settle now.
Yeah.
And just monitor it for the next month or so, and then we'll look to put another rock structure in and fill it with more corals.
Cool. And I noticed the way you've got the rock set there, you're kind of like the algae that you have is in the shade.
Yes.
So that should die back too. So I mean, you'll probably have to watch your nutrients there if it dies back, or try and maybe remove it manually before it starts to foul the water.
Yeah, it is dying slowly.
Yeah.
So we'll get on top of it.
Yep. Oh yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
And you know what's cool is to see the change, and this is where it's kind of cool to have this monthly thing, to see the change that happens in the course of a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It just gives me a good feeling about them, how they're looking at the minute. So
yeah,
I'm happy with the way it's gone at the minute.
And they're all millies, right? You don't have the tenuous anymore?
They're all millies, yeah, they're all millies. That one's a bubble gum, which is like bright pink with blue tips, but it's not showing it up the best with the filter on.
It's so hard.
It is, yeah, and that one is like purple with a bit of pink starting to come right through. So he's growing new branches as well, which is good. That one's like pink with white tips. The one at the back is just a pink millie, but he's starting to get a lot of green, so it's actually looking really nice. It's pink and green millie, and then that one, that's just an unknown millie. No idea what that one is. That's cool. That's changed colour so many times.
Yeah.
It's like purple and green, if you like.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. It's once it's all grown out and they've all started to encrust and things like that, then it's going to look really good. That's a bit I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do need to watch them growing out the water.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, Marcus's Reef. Yeah, more white light. Sorry, but as a diver, the ocean doesn't look like the Windex folks like their tanks to look. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate both. Whiter midday. Enjoy the tank whiter and blue. Yeah, you know, Marcus, it's interesting because I love the blue. I love seeing, I'm about the color. I love seeing the color. And at the same time, I'm going to try something with the lighting that I've looked, and I haven't seen anyone else try this, but I want to try and replicate what the bottom looks like when you're snorkeling with those larger sort of shimmer ripples, if you know what I mean. So between the gyres and what I'm thinking about doing with lighting, I'm going to see if I can replicate that. So part of that look is less blue. Not that the blue won't be there, because it will, but that it won't be so overwhelmingly blue. And I remember one thing I loved about my D-Sunny Chinese black box lights was how perfect the sort of balance was between white and blue. Whatever you saw with your eyes, that's what you captured on what you could capture on video. There was no adjustment required. And I've never been able to set any lights I've had since to the same type of spectrum. So I'm hoping to be able to get between the two things, the bottom ripple not being so, like, you know, the disco ball effect everybody talks about, not in terms of color, but in terms of size of the ripple. I want to get wider areas. So we'll see what happens, but that also is going to involve more white light. And I don't know, we'll see if I like it.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of SPS keepers over here, and they all love to run white lights with blue as well, but they do like the whitest tint to the tanks.
Yeah.
I only put a little bit in just to start with. I've only got 5% in there and 5% red, and then the rest is all blue. But yeah, I do like a little bit of white lights, and I must admit, you can go too blue for me, and if you know. So it took me a while to play around with the schedule when I redid it. And then I fell on this schedule, and I thought, yeah, I like that. That looks good. And corals have reacted really well to it.
Oh, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, hey, Peter M. Peter M is with us from Croatia. Welcome. Oscar, Insane Reefer, I think you can achieve that with Wave Cindy. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool. Well, let's oh, anything else new, Ryan, before I see what Alex has been up to?
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool.
We've covered everything.
All
God,
right.
GSP is still doing quite well.
Yep.
Now we've upped the floor, but he's actually enjoying it a bit more.
Yeah.
Which is good. So,
it's so bright. So bright.
Is, yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring Alex in and see what's been going on over there. Oops. There we go. Sorry, Alex, I just about took you out.
It's all right.
Yeah, Oscar, talking about waves, you do have to be careful. I know that because waves are going to be less random than the other type of flow I've ever had, and it's the front panel that's going, because I have the gyres are going to be on the back, not on the sides because of the shape of it. So it is the front panel that's going to be vulnerable to that. But I don't want them on a really high setting because I'm not looking for churn. If I need to, I will add other flow options in the tank like I have before, just to target certain areas. Like if I start having SPS up on the rocks, I will definitely put specific power heads in for that. But the gyres themselves are just going to be meant to circulate water within the tank. And there will be some waves with that. And if I can get the pulses correct, I should be able to get a broad wave that isn't going to pound the front. And well, we'll see what happens. Okay. All right. Yeah, Marcus, it's true about the fish. It's so true. Have the tank where you can enjoy a wider, more realistic spectrum and go to the blue later. You'll also enjoy your fish much more. It's like having 2 tanks in one. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. So Alex is cleaning the glass with a massive flipper.
A lot of work on this thin glass.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, to move them?
Yeah, this is not 3/4, so it's a little trickier. That's for sure.
Yeah. I remember when I used a regular flipper on one of the Mollywood breeder tanks. And because those are just small, like 20-gallon tanks, I could barely move the thing. And that's how I learned about that. Oh, Alex is frozen. Is this this Marcus's Reef? Is that your big tank? Is that the 700 that you're working on there?
What was that?
Is that the 700-gallon tank that you're working on there?
Nope, this is just the 150.
Oh, just the 150, just. How are the fish doing?
They're doing well. Angel's still doing great.
Good.
I don't know where the Spanish hog just went to. Probably in its cave, and then, oh, there it is. Then,
Can I come out yet?
The puffer's doing all right. So
Cool.
So overall, things are doing well with the fish.
Yeah.
Same with the reef. The corals, some are good and some are not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That's what I'm running into right now. I don't understand it. I don't know what changes from one day to the next, especially since I addressed the phosphate problem, the low phosphate. I lost a yellow hammer, which I think I know where I can get a replacement if we ever have another coral show in London or KW in my area. And the hammer that I had in the 100-gallon section was right beside the fox coral, and it was fine. And all of a sudden, it's lost the whole back. There's 3 small heads at the back that are lost. And I think it's because maybe the fox coral was maybe resting on it, because the fox coral is not aggressive. It doesn't have sweeper tentacles. It doesn't exude any kind of slime. It's a euphilia. It just opens up and it just kind of drapes itself over things. So I think that's what happened. I wasn't paying enough attention. Oh, hey, Skinner JW. Oh, no, that's too bad. Hey, Cindy and everyone. I was going to join in today, but was wrestling with my dog and I lost with a loose tooth and a big fat lip. Oh, no. Man, I hope that tooth is okay. Chili Will's Reef. This is a nightmare. What you're going through with your tank is a nightmare. Oh, yeah, you're not kidding. And you know what? I guess I could get all mad and upset and start ranting and whatever, but there's no point. All it does is increase my blood pressure. I mean, this guy is not worth worrying about. And I can't remember if I told you guys this on last week's stream, but I realized the reason I don't hound people is because I was hounded and I hated how that felt. Not that I ever sabotaged a job, but it sure made me care less about my work. And I don't, so I won't ever do that to anybody. So you know what? If he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, it's on him. And like I said before, there are 5 working days left in that 1 month. And I think I'll know by Thursday night what's going to happen. So that's when I will, start talking to the LFS and go, you know what, you guys, this is what has to happen now. So we'll see. Like I said, I hope, but I'm not optimistic. I'll keep you posted. So Alex, you've been working on the canopy on your tank.
yeah,
On the display area.
yeah.
Cindy is a wise woman, yeah. And how's that going? Did you overcome your challenges with getting things lifted up in the air and all that, or are you at that stage yet?
Haven't gotten to that stage yet. I'm gonna make it so that I could assemble it without lifting giant pieces in the air
Yeah.
this time around. So it'll probably be what I've decided I have to do anyways is, because a lot of this canopy is going to be in the humidity exposure zone.
Mm-hmm.
The posts, part of the posts, and the whole upper canopy frame are going to have to get painted. So right now I got to dry fit everything, put all the posts in, build the canopy structure itself, which just going to be a 2x4 frame. And it's probably going to have some other 1/2-inch pieces on it too, because I need to reinforce it a little bit more with like T-beams and L-beams. So I'm going to do that.
Is that for light? Is that to support lighting?
Lighting, plumbing, electrical,
right, and plus the span.
Yeah, it's with these 4-foot tanks, I mean, 4 feet front to back and 8 feet long. I mean, I wasn't really worried about that, but the spans here are larger, so I want to have more peace of mind, I guess would be a way to put it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change the design a little bit, but I have figured out though that to kind of seal the top in, I have figured out how I'm going to do that, which I'm going to probably use FRP board.
And what's that? Fiberglass reinforced plastic?
Yep.
That stuff? Oh, and it has a little bit of a rough texture on it?
It has a bumpy texture on one side of it, yeah, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to experiment a little bit with it, but the ideal way to put it on, so I'm not lifting things way up in the air or anything, is once I get the frame of the canopy painted and it's all done, I'll just set the sheet on top of it and go from underneath with some silicone or something else to kind of seal it in place.
Yeah.
So that way, because there's only like a 4-inch gap between the ceiling, the top of the tank and the ceiling.
Yeah.
So I think that'll work good to give me a good barrier there.
Because it doesn't have to be, and it doesn't have to be watertight. It just has to be airtight mostly. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep it as airtight as I can too, because I wanna be able to negative pressure the canopy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, forgot about that.
So the canopy itself will be it'll be pretty closed up. Even the doors are gonna have weather sealing on them and stuff. That's the plan. So
nice.
But it's coming along. I mean, I had a few design challenges to overcome because originally I was going to build 4x4 posts, like hollow ones, and that became impractical. So then I thought about doing 2x4 posts and like miter joining them together, like taking 4 2x4s and mitering them together. But then while I could have done it, it would have been a nightmare to make a jig up to hold everything properly. So I ended up finding someone online that they were talking about, instead of like an alternative to 4x4 posts, because the problem with those is they're not very straight ever.
Yeah.
And I needed something that's...
They twist and rotate, yeah.
Yeah. So I found someone that was doing something where they take 2 2x4s and then a strip of 1/2-inch plywood, and you basically sandwich the plywood in the middle, and you use liquid nails to glue it all down, and then screw it together. And the nice thing is that even though I had multiple 2x4s that had bowing in them, they were still tracking straight in one direction. At least they were just bowing. you put them opposing to each other, and then it basically makes a straight beam for you.
Mm-hmm.
So out of the bunch that I made, I only had 2 that still had a little bit of a bend in them and weren't perfectly straight. And those actually worked out okay because I'm going to bolt them to each other to straighten each other out and be a big support post in the back. So had a lot of table saw work.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. I don't know if I told you guys, we saw a place, a corner where there's a house being built near us, and they had roof trusses laying on the ground. And there were made like the pile was probably 3 feet high because they're all laying there in a pile, all lined up, you know. But the thing is, they went across and there was a big dip in the middle because they were following the contour of the ground. So they'll never be able to use those because they're the way they're made. I guess they have to be engineered specifically to really, really tight tolerances, or they won't pass inspection. And I just thought, what a waste of wood. Like, why would they do that? And like what you're talking about, my husband has done that a lot of times with in certain situations where all he needed was the support. It didn't really matter what it looked like or how it got there, because as long as the support was consistent, then it would work. So yeah, sometimes you got to be fancy.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mess back here right now, but I've got my first 2 posts in. But yeah, they're basically bolted onto the tank like this. The other ones will be a little different than this corner, but that's how they're squared up on here, and they don't really have to they don't have to hold the lateral load, so they're just going to be taking a vertical load. So the canopy will be notched here, which, forgive my notches, I know they're wider than they need to be, and I did that on purpose. So this one actually is a little ugly because I had to find my technique there, which was not very fun.
But you're going to cover these up, right?
Yeah, you're not going to see it. Like, I'm going to skin these with some type of finished wood or plywood.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I got the laser level up there, and then I shot a beam across the top there so I could cut every one of these posts to the right height. Which,
look at you with the camera work, hiding what's going on the floor there.
oh, this mess?
Yeah.
It's
the
a
scale,
little messy still.
The scale of it.
I'll get it cleaned up, but this is one of the other ones that I got everything countersunk, and so then this one's in a metal, so it's got 4 bolts through. But yeah, so it's coming along.
Yep. And have you done any sort of flood mitigation as far as, is there any way that water could enter your basement? Have you set something up to get that away? Because I'm just thinking wood.
Well, I mean, there's always the sump pit.
Yeah.
But I'll be perfectly honest in saying that no matter what material you use here, I mean, if there's a big flood, I mean, it's gonna it's gonna get it. If it's metal, it would rust.
Yeah.
You know, it's I guess a way I look at it is, if it's not submerged for a significant amount of time, it would be fine.
Yeah. Exactly.
It could dry out and everything. If there's enough water to get water into the tank, though, I mean, at that point, everything's pretty much done anyway. So
that is a disaster. That's like a natural disaster of the proportions where you probably wouldn't even be in your house at that point. Yeah.
Or the tank were to have a catastrophic failure, which at that point, the stand's going to be the least of my worries. So.
Exactly. Well, we talked a lot about that when we set up the sump in the basement too, because we didn't want to have problems if there was a lot of water on the floor. And there have been a few floods already, and so that's why we use the concrete blocks and the stud wall.
Yeah, I have been actually pretty shocked over here because there is a river a few I don't know, probably a quarter mile from me. But
Yeah.
we are not. We are on the we're on the inside of the river curve,
Mm-hmm.
and we are not in a floodplain.
Mm.
So there's quite a descent to get down to that, and then I don't know how our like our ground here is got some really good drainage in it,
Mm-hmm.
because even when we've gotten like 1 or 2 inches of rain, my sump pump has still not gone off.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it's just how they engineer neighborhoods now, that they're trying to mitigate that.
It's true. And in our neighborhood, it was the drainage is all set up so that there are swales between each property and you're not allowed to build on them. And that includes going across the back. But people build fences anyway. I mean, they really shouldn't, but they do. I think it's unrealistic of the municipality to think people are not going to build fences. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But we have spots. This whole area is on clay and sand because we're really close to the lake. And in our backyard, we've identified places we can't plant trees because the water won't drain. So we've had a couple little pine trees. We lost a hemlock, a significantly large hemlock that we planted, and replaced it with a different kind of pine tree that can tolerate more wet. And we lost a small pine tree. But the crazy thing is, it's patchy. And I'm talking about like a 6x6 area where there's clay like 3 feet down, and the water just sits there. It doesn't even run away. And our neighbors at the back, they have a little river that goes along the back of their yard when there's heavy rain. Like it's really hard to tell, but because of the way they build the houses and everything, we're raised up from that. So all the water runs away from the house. And so we'll see, but our window wells are level with the ground, the top of the window well. And I think that's because we have an 8-foot 4-inch foundation. So we have the 8-foot ceilings in the basement. So I don't know whether that makes us vulnerable to, water coming over the top from the grass into the window well and into the house. I guess we'll find out if we ever have a point where there's so much rain that the window well starts to fill up because of the direction of the rain. I guess that's when I'll find out whether we're going to have water coming through the window.
Do you have a drain in the window well?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, they're like French drains inside the window wells, and there's like several inches of gravel.
Too, so.
Yeah. So you only have to worry about it when you got a reef tank in the basement, right?
Well, I mean, and again, it's one of those things of there's some kind of disaster or something,
Yeah, that's going to be the last of your worries.
Yeah. So it could just as easily be a tornado come and knock the whole top of the house off too. So
that's right. And apparently Ontario here has had 33 confirmed tornadoes this year, and that's about 30% more than normal. So I don't know whether it's just going to be they said that's the most since 1940.
Yeah, in my area they are fairly rare, although there's a town not far from me, about 10-15 miles, and actually the track of the tornado started somewhere just on the other side of the river here. There was a EF5 that leveled the town in 1990. So,
oh boy,
but it's so rare. I guess I can't unless I'm going to live in a concrete bunker that's everything proof. Then you always have that risk.
It doesn't matter where you go. I mean, wherever you live, there's some sort of climate issue. We're just lucky here we don't get earthquakes because we're on the rock, on the shield. And so that's probably the only thing that we can pretty much be safe from. There was major wind a couple weeks ago here, and giant 60-foot walnut trees in the backyards across the street from us were basically bent in half, like they were broken off. And there were walnuts all over the road and the front lawn of the houses directly across and the one beside it. Like it was absolutely crazy. Yeah, Lorena says the reaping willow lives well, sandy, not well-drained soil, so much that it's planted in places where the soil is almost muddy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we had that discussion because my husband is an arborist. That was his original career. And he has a big hate for weeping willows because what they'll do is their roots travel so far. If we planted a weeping willow, our neighbor behind us would probably have to keep an axe in his basement to cut off the roots as they came through the foundation. I mean, obviously that's just exaggeration, but yeah, they're very, very invasive in the sense that in urban areas, they can damage a lot of underground stuff. So our daughter's property, they've got a creek that runs through it and there's all kinds of them there. And every storm they lose one or lose branches because they're old. But anyway, yeah, there are other willows as well that don't get huge and massive. So especially now, there are some hybrid cultivars that are coming out with nice colors and stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll have to see because we're planting the trees for privacy at the back of our house. And so they're deliberately spaced in certain positions to block views from our neighbors' houses. And so we'll see what happens with that. Andrew Hudson says, hey, Alex.
Hello.
And Andrew Hudson, what do you do for electricity backup there, Alex?
Well, I have a portable generator and generator interlock switch on my my main electrical panel, so I can safely connect my generator to the house without having to worry about a backfeed issue. I also have an emergency kit that I keep that's got, right at the moment, about a dozen battery-operated air pumps with a bunch of extra batteries. I actually had my first power outage a few weeks ago here. I think we were out for about 2 hours, and and power went out, and went and looked outside, and it was the whole neighborhood, and so I went and got all my battery operated air pumps out and started putting air bubblers into all the tanks, and I was like, well, we'll let it go with this for right now. But I put them in in the frag tank, the tank with the 150 with the fish, and I also put them into my sump tanks. The only tank I just left alone for the time being was the 700 refugium, just because there's so much algae in there, and I knew that wasn't going to have an oxygen depletion problem for a while. So, but as I get more going, I'm probably going to possibly lean at doing some battery backups. I might not do them as like automatic ones for everything, but I might make myself like a battery pack, and maybe like a little wheeled case or something, to where if something happens, I could wheel it out, put it out, get it going, and then maybe even make a solar charger or something for it too. We'll see.
Yeah. How's the sound, by the way? I had to shut off my streamer thing because my one hearing thing battery went out. You getting okay? Feedback? Okay. Yeah, Devin Reef Dudes put out a video on solar powered battery backup, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet, but it'd be interesting to see what he's done. And after we had a power outage that was maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and I did an Instagram post about it, and I did exactly what you did. I put bubblers in. The main system, the battery backup, kept the return pump running, so the water was moving, and the heater. And then after a while, we got the generator out, and we plugged the heater and the Inkbird and the return pump into that. And I just threw a couple of bubblers in because I have 4 of those battery-operated air bubbler pumps. And I put one in the observation tank, of course, actually 2, because it was more important because it's, the fish in there. And we got through it okay. but it just made us talk more about, okay, generator time. And that was during that storm. It was just after the storm was over, and I think a lot of trees were down. And then all of a sudden the power just went out, and I don't know what they were doing, maybe fixing something, but yeah, so we're gonna, okay, the thing is, if I don't get a tank until the new year, there's no point in getting a whole home generator. But then maybe there is a point in getting a whole home generator, because look what I got going on downstairs, right?
Well,
So,
I think the way that I did the generator game with my last build was I bought the generator before the tank was done, because after you have the tank, then you're not asking well, wait, do I want to buy these fish and corals or a generator?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that can come up, and that's why I was like, I bought my generator before my tank was even done, with the last house, and it's a propane gen too, so I don't have to run it all the time. I fire it up periodically. When I got to the new house here, I fired it up. I still got to do I'd still like to do more testing over here with it, but I also look at that as a last resort.
Yeah.
My professional experience, I deal with a lot of emergencies like this, and as tempting as it is to just say, let's haul out the generator every time the lights go out, I tend to think more along the lines of, well, do I understand what has happened? Like, if there's a big storm or something that's come by, how widespread is the impact? Am I going to be down for days,
Yeah.
a week, or a few hours? And that's like, even when like I went and walked around my neighborhood after my lights went out, and because everybody was calling the power company, so I was like, well, it's not something I need to really worry about doing. But then everyone's like, oh, it'll be on by like 10 o'clock at night or something. I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna get the gen out for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'd rather conserve my fuel and wait until I'm a little bit closer to the time where I go, okay, now I need to worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Even then, I'm going to shut most of I'm going to put flow pumps on and the main return. I'm going to let it circulate for an hour or two, and I'm probably going to shut it all off again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I had done in the past for intermittent, like for power outages, is intermittent shutoffs. On for 10 minutes, off for 20 minutes, that kind of thing. And now we have the battery backup, the UPS, I guess it's called. But you know, we have natural gas, and we can get a natural gas generator with a transfer switch, because I worry more about something like this happening when we're not home. Because then what do? You know, especially if you're away for a few days, or like, who knows, right? You just never know.
This is another one of having a good emergency plan.
Yep.
And somebody that can respond. Like,
exactly.
When I go on vacations, I have a friend that knows what they're doing, come over and check things every few days. And on top of that, there's written instructions and the emergency kits right there. Anybody watching my house, like my parents are going to watch my house or something, like, I got the emergency kit. Not only do they have, like, I show them it, they have to prove to me that they understood what I told them. And I go, okay, now you do what I just told you.
That's right.
And it's, again, it's part of my professional experience is that and the thing about battery operated air pumps is a child could do that.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, when I bought those 3 pumps, 3 or 4, I have 4, 4 pumps. I also bought D batteries, and I probably spent $75 on D batteries. I can barely lift up the container, the plastic bucket that I've got them in. I don't even know how many I have, like maybe 30, something like that. And so I remove them when I'm done with them. I put everything away again, and I put the same batteries back in. I test it, make sure that it's running. I check, because I don't know when those batteries are going to run out. And as soon as the sound changes, I take a battery out. I've only had to do it once and it sounded like it was going really, really slow. So I just pulled the batteries, put fresh ones in, and that's what it was. And then I, put the batteries for recycling, because that's what people forget. And it's no good to have them if you don't have the batteries. And then there's that other type that you can actually plug in. They have batteries and they detect when the power goes off, and then they'll automatically turn on. And I have 2 of those. I've never used them. Like, you would think I should probably use them. And, maybe one of these days I will go down there, or maybe tomorrow. That'll be part of the next video update, is going down, getting them out, getting them plugged in and ready to go.
I do have that kind, and I'm trying to think, because I think those are I think the ones I had were on all the time. Like, you plug it in and it's just on.
Mm-hmm.
But then if the power goes out, then it switches to battery. But as far as, like, the way I've always looked at it is, anybody can put that into a tank.
Yeah.
And that buys me time, because like, a good example, my wife is not a mechanical person. Nothing wrong with it. Some people just are not good with mechanical devices. If I asked her to hook up the generator, it's not happening.
Yeah. I know what to do, but I'm scared of it. And I don't have a lot of grip strength. So turning it on, I don't know that I could grasp a cord to turn it on. Yeah.
There's a lot of steps to it, because it's heavy.
Yeah.
Then you got to hook a propane tank up to it. Then you got to turn the gas on before you start it. So you might smell a little bit of propane, which might freak someone out, because they'll be like, I smell. That's why I'm like, battery operated air pumps.
Yep.
Those, anybody could do it.
Yeah.
So
this is it. And this is money that, it's kind of in the same category as UV sterilizer. People don't want to spend the money because they don't see it as a priority. And then that's the first thing that happens when there is some issue where they need it, and they go, geez, I wish I had that. Well, so that's why when I lost my pygmy hawkfish, the geometric hawkfish, it's not actually a hawkfish. I can't remember, basslet maybe. That poor fish, my tank got down to 66 degrees with an ice storm. We were out for, I think the power was out for about 13 hours. And I was able to maintain some aeration just by the whole, scoop water out and pour it in. But the heat, I couldn't do anything about the heat. I now have an emergency blanket, but then I didn't. And when I lost that fish, I thought, okay, I don't want this to happen again, because he was one of my favorite fish. And I will get another one someday, but that was really disturbing for me, because it would have been so simple. It was a matter of spending less than $100, which is cheaper than that fish cost me at the time, to get the equipment to do some life support. And now that would be a UPC, so that the heater could keep going in that case. But on a more broad level, just to keep aeration in the tank. Because the corals, whatever happens is going to happen, but the fish, like they need it, and they can move to the source of the bubbles, if they have to. Whereas the coral, you can't really worry about them getting oxygen, but if the fish are moving around, at least they'll disperse it a little bit. Yeah. Oh, hey, Sammy31D. So Marcus's Reef says, that's how I do it with my generator, a few hours here and there. I have mine wired into the main panel outside. Yep. And Sammy31D, I use an inverter generator, runs the Reef plus fridge and TV on 2200 watts, 500 plus extension cords, till I can afford a Generac setup. Yeah, we're planning on getting a Briggs & Stratton. There's a company that's within an hour of here that's kind of like the Central Ontario distributor and authorized maintenance company, and they have a really, really good reputation. So that's what our plumber recommended. That's what, or rather, our electrician recommended. That's what they install all the time. So that's what we're going to be doing. We just have to make the phone call and place the order, because we know we're going to be waiting. because there's a huge shortage of this kind of stuff right now. So we probably should have called back in May. We might be getting it by the end of the year, but you know. Hey, Swiss Ocean. Who from Switzerland? How are you guys doing? Happy reefing. Love your content. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for stopping by. Man or woman? So, Alex, this is kind of a side view of part of your posts, and you're sitting on the stand.
Yep.
Cool. And what's outside that window?
Oh, there's just a piece of styrofoam there. I had
Oh,
put it there last winter, and I never took it out. And, yeah, it's almost winter again. I'll probably leave it there.
yeah, true.
This is kind of this corner of the basement is a little bit like even though I got vents here and stuff, I had a lot of condensation on the window last winter, so I'm actually thinking my dehumidifier, I'm gonna exhaust it into the basement. I just haven't decided if I'm gonna exhaust it on the other side, or I might stick it over here with its primary exhaust out, and then kind of vent it down to the other side of the room eventually. Just run it along the floor over here, where the seating is going to be, because I can kind of hide it over there.
Yeah. Will you drill through the wall to put the vent?
I got to put a hole in the corner over here to have the return lines, the drain line, the ventilation intake line, and electrical.
Yeah.
So that's all covered. Yeah.
We talked about how you can make like a little knee wall or a bulkhead to hide it all. Yeah.
Yep. I'm just gonna cut a hole there, and then I'm gonna extend my plumbing truss out essentially to keep all that stuff here.
Yeah.
And then it's just gonna come up, and then in the corner, I'll make the connections into the canopy. I'll bring it in there. So I'm gonna bring in three circuits into the canopy. So
yeah. Oh, this is exciting. You know, when you think of where you were, 3 months ago, and then looking at this now, it's like it starts to you can start imagining it, like it starts to take shape.
Well, when I put the first post up, and I was like, wow, this is like really big.
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling someone else on the phone recently this too, and it was they're like, how are you now just figuring out it's big? And I'm like, it's different, you know, like the stand's here and the stand's enormous, but the stand's only 17 inches tall right now.
Yep.
When you add posts that are like 88 inches tall,
yep.
Then you start to go, holy crap, like this is a very large object. I just didn't see the other piece of it.
Yeah.
So when the canopy gets on this thing all the way, its true scale is going to start to be felt by me, I guess would be a way to put it.
Yeah. I know
it's real.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It was really hard to get a sense. And when the stands get in this room, I will have a much better sense of the mass of the thing. I can look at the tank, and yeah, the tank is big. It's 5 by 5.5 feet. Well, 6 feet actually along the top when you include the overflow. That's big, but until you actually see it in the room on the stand, you have no actual sense of the mass of the object. And well, when everybody sees the stand in the room, you'll know why I didn't want black. As soon as you see it, you'll know. And that's when I'll really get an idea of, well, even walking around it. Like what I've been trying to do is train myself to walk along the wall on both sides and not cross through the middle. Like, I mean, as it is, I'm sitting at this table, but to sort of try and see, okay, is this really going to be enough space? Because the way we have the stand located kind of with tape on the floor gives me 3 feet on the side where the sink is and 2 feet at the front. And I think 2 feet is enough, 24 inches. But you know how sometimes you're in a really narrow aisle in a store and you can't even bend over because it's too narrow. So I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case with the front. But then the only time I should have to really bend over is when I drop the platform down to step up. So, you know, it's until it's actually in here, your brain can't get your mind, you can't get your head around the space that it takes up.
Yeah, I've had the same thing with walking around everything, because where parts of the tank are to reach my office area,
Right, right.
I have now altered my path with the stand being completed, and I'm like, I was even starting to do it before. I'm like, wow, this is going to take me longer to like get around the basement now.
You're not going to be able to run and get the phone.
Well, it made my path to get out of the basement longer, and I'm like, boy, do I really want this? And I'm like thinking, I'm like, you're complaining about that?
I know, right? It'll be like a little retreat for you back in the corner there.
Yeah. No, that's the point of this, is to have a lot of different viewing angles. And
Yep. Yeah, and I'm still hoping my comfy armchair that I had my sister recover for me will fit in the corner over here. And when you look at the tape on the floor, it's a bulky chair, but it looks like there's plenty of space that you're not going to be inching by the chair to get around the corner. And that's what I don't want. I don't want to jam up the space so much that I'm having to move stuff to get down the side of the tank or whatever. As it is, I'm bringing in some plants from outside that are going to be sitting in front of the window here. They're fairly large. They're palm plants that grew really well. And I'm going to put them in here. We were talking about plants. I got the little dollies that, with the wheels on them. And so I'm going to put them in front of the window here, and they'll be beside the tank. And that might look nice, actually, when you think about it. And when I need to get in there, I just want to be able to roll them towards the chair and towards the wall and do what I need to do. And I'm hoping it'll be as easy as I think, but Andrew Hudson says, I use an inverter running off a 100-amp battery, but have a small tractor-driven generator to run the whole house if the power is going to be off for any time. That's handy. And you're in the UK, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
cool.
It's going to be fun here, though. The next few weeks, I'm hoping. Well, I'm not trying to rush to get there, but I'm hoping by the time Reefapalooza comes around, I'll have the top canopy frame at least somewhat done.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Then the fun work's going to begin once the canopy frame is done, because then I have to build the bottom of the tank, which
the base.
That's going to be. I think part of it's going to go really fast, and then it's going to hit a slowdown.
Yeah.
I think the plywood's going to go down pretty quickly, but when it comes to me making the edge of the tank that's going to support the glass, that's going to take a little more time to get that in.
Yeah.
Because I gotta, against the back wall here, I have to get bolts through there, and you kind of can't. You're not going to be able to reach the underside of it, because it's going to be covered with plywood. So
yeah, exactly.
I've already got some ideas on how I will defeat that problem, but it's still a problem I got to overcome. So
yeah, you have to think about 20 steps ahead to make sure that when you reach that point, you're not going to have been blocked by something you already did. We've got the same thing going on in here with the little controller boxes my husband's building me to put on the wall behind the tank. And I decided on a box so that there'd be no risk of water splashing on the controller. So it'll have a top, but it won't have a bottom, because the wires are going to come in up from the bottom and be managed inside for the most part, and the controllers will be inside. And then we realized that because of the location of the drain pipes, I only have 8 inches of width between the outside of the tank and the first drain pipe. So our original plan was to put them flat against the wall so that the door would open up and the controllers would be inside. But I can only make an 8-inch wide box because of the door swing, right? So yeah, that's that. I'm just trying to think that the orientation. So we decided to put the narrow side of the box, like the front to back, to put it against the wall. And then the door will open and face me, and it'll be however, like 12 inches. I have a maximum of 12 inches available then, because all I have to do is clear the stand, because it'll be below the overflow. The overflow juts into that above. So the box will be right below the overflow. The side of the box will be attached to the wall, and I can open my door, and the controllers will be inside on the back. And he's going to arrange it so that he's going to find a way to hang it, the box, so that if I need to get in behind the tank, I can just lift it off and set it aside and get in behind the tank. And then the bottom of the tank's going to be open, but because of the platforms, I'll have, I think it's 14 inches off the floor. Actually, it's 12, because 2 inches of it is going to be the stand, the tubular steel stand. So there's not going to be a hope that I'm going to be able to crawl in under it. So, it's one of those things where we have to be pretty sure that we can access back there if we have to. And this is the only way from the side that we're probably going to be able to do it. And the other thing we've decided to do is to get a piece of white coroplast to create a cover for the entire back, so that when you look under the stand towards the back, you won't see any of the plugs or wires or any of that stuff, because this will rest just inside the stand against the back frame. And so it'll just be like a nice white cover across the back underneath. So, like things like that. And I keep thinking, oh man, this is going to look so messy. It's black wires, it's white wires, it's everything all over the place. But then, oh no, you won't see it. So I don't know, there's so much planning, and that's why I'm just so disappointed at him not getting the stand color right the first time around, because man, oh man, how does that get done wrong? I don't get it. Not at all.
Yeah, and I've even changed how I was going to do things, because part of that just how it affects things later on down the road, where you said not being able to do things. Well, I was thinking about all the posts that I need to put in, especially the one along the back wall here, that I'm like, well, if I put the plywood down where I have my threaded rods and stuff, I'm like, it will not be possible for me to reach it. Like I can't even drill the holes for it. I can't do any of that. So that's where I turned around and said, you know what? I'm going to make the posts first. Then I could make the canopy frame. I could take it all down. I could paint it and get it ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that's done, then I could come back around and start the plywood.
Yeah.
And then that's going to be a fun challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you imagine starting from the bottom and working up, right? But in some cases, you can't do that. You have to take things out of like a logical, intuitive sequence, because of exactly what you said, accessibility problems that you have to try and anticipate.
Yeah, and then once I get the plywood down, then I have to make the perimeter brace to hold the glass bottom. So that's going to be a lot of fun work, because I still haven't 100% decided on the method I'm going to use for that. Like I know that it's going to be something like a 2x6. And then some other kind of piece of wood, probably a hardwood, that's going to go like this. But I'm probably going to join them together somehow with a joint, and then probably put some kind of support in too.
Yeah.
And then the 2x6 is going to get holes drilled in a pattern, and then that's going to go through all 3 layers of plywood. and then I'm going to back it with a 2x6 on the other side. So now you're talking 3 inches for this.
Yep.
Another 2¼ inches. So you're going to 5¼ inch beam around the whole outer edge.
Yep.
That's bolted together. So.
And it's sourcing the parts too. I mean, getting 8-inch bolts. And have you thought about using any kind of an aluminum with a profile that won't deflect for support?
No, I originally was going to use stainless steel, but it was going to be ridiculously expensive.
Right, yeah.
And honestly, when I started thinking about how I was going to back it up with a piece of wood anyways, it's no different than what I'm doing in my other tanks now. I mean, it's the likelihood of failure is incredibly low. Because once I get that edge all the way around and I install it, then I will be ready to start the finishing work on the bottom of the tank.
Yeah.
So pond armor and fiberglassing. Then I need to make the top edge for all the cross bracing to hold the top lip of the glass together.
Yeah.
So I'm probably, whenever the outer edge is done, I'm going to build the upper edge right on top of it on the bottom of the tank so that they align up perfectly.
Yeah.
That's going to be some kind of hardwood T-beam so that I can accommodate the lip of the glass. I need a 2-inch overlap there.
Yeah.
I also need to accommodate threaded rod cross bracing above it. And then a little bit of a flat piece too to help secure that beam, so that it can't push out because it's going to be fighting a T-beam.
So when you take your threaded rod through from the front to the back, are you going to go right through the wall with it? At the top edge, your cross brace?
Yeah, so there'll be try to see you. So if this was looking at the top frame, so the glass would be on the bottom 2 inches. There'll be a flat piece, and then above it, it will go up high enough to where I could drill holes all the way through there to attach the threaded rod cross bracing.
And how do you get it fastened at the back, like at the wall side of it? There's
still going to be 6 inches there.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, gotcha.
It's long. And this is the caveat is, and I'm pretty sure I'll be okay. I can make it work. Is just the amount of distance between the front of the tank I'm sitting at and the wall behind it to be able to get a threaded rod in there and go through and through. I don't think it will be a problem, but I still have to do a little bit of work on figuring out how many cross braces I'm going to use. I don't want to go to the limit of it, but I don't want to go to an extreme either. So I've got to still do a little bit of work on that to figure it out. But I do know I am going to drill whatever pattern of those I put in. I'm going to drill double the holes and do intermediate spacing. So if I need to do servicing to a threaded rod cross brace and I have to remove one, I will be able to put one on either side of it and have the holes and everything ready to go. So all it's going to take is just to put it in, tension it up, and then I can pull the other one.
Yeah, exactly. Fletcher, right? Is my stand steel or aluminum? It's steel. I originally was going to go with aluminum, but it was almost as expensive as the tank to get aluminum. So no, that was a no-go. Sammy 31D, any plans for an aquarium controller, Trident, Alcatronic? Well, after my success with getting these lights programmed yesterday, I actually got the Hydros box out of the shelf that it was behind here. And it's on the kitchen counter now, so I might actually tackle that tomorrow. I'm always nervous about the electronic part of it, getting it online and all that kind of stuff, because in the past I've had such trouble with it. So apparently it's easy to use, and I've already decided what I'm going to use it for downstairs, because I have one Jabo power head that's in the 150-gallon section of the sump that periodically the impeller stops turning, so the controller flashes, and all you have to do is turn it off and back on again, and it runs until the next time it stops, which is like a day later. So I'm going to use the hydros to turn that thing off and on 4 times a day, just to keep it running. And I'm also going to use it for pH and as a secondary temperature confirmation for my shallow 50, because that's where the temperature sensor is for the Inkbird. So I'm going to put the hydros temperature sensor up there just to confirm that it's all good. I'm going to put the pH probe. I guess it depends on how long the cord is and where I can accommodate it. But I'm going to put it in an area of decent flow so that it doesn't accumulate bubbles. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And yeah, so those 3 things, off, on, and the 2 probes. And then I think I'll have other availability. So I'm not going to use an Apex or any of the other controllers. I guess I can't remember what the GHL one is called at this point, because I don't trust them to do things for me. I like to have the information. I think most of them are grossly overpriced. So I'm going to have the thing monitor the things that I want monitored and then act on the information. In the case of the Jabo on-off, I'll trust it to do that because that's low risk. When it comes to testing, I'm still waiting for the test machine to come because they're now waiting for the saltwater reagent discs. Excuse me. And they're out of stock everywhere. When I do a search everywhere in the US, the Lamont stuff is really, really backed up. So once I get those discs, I can do a test in 2 minutes and find out what the parameters are. They're expensive. I wouldn't do it every day, but I would probably do at least once a week, and then I can fill in with ALK testing using the HANA. So that's my plan for now. I might change my mind. Things, I guess it depends. I've never ever run anything this big before, obviously. So there could be things that come along where, you know, I didn't anticipate something being such a time sucker that I would have to address it. So we'll see. I think as large an investment you've made, you'd really benefit from an Apex. You know what? The Apex is not the price. I mean, this test thing I'm getting was expensive, but worth it in terms of time saving. Oh, we lost Ryan. His phone must have died. With Apex, it's not the price. And it's more that when it first came out, I think it was around 2014, 2015, I did a lot of reading about it because the idea of it appealed to me. And back then I only had a nano tank, so I had no real need for it. But what I noticed was things would happen to people based on a simple error in programming that would result in a catastrophe in their tank. And I know myself. I'm not going to be comfortable having something that if I make one small error, I could take out my whole system or cause a flood, or I forget to turn something on, or I don't understand that on is not what you want. You know what I mean? It just, to me, is just, I'm not willing to invest the effort and the time in learning how to do the programming. I could do it. I've done other stuff like that before, but honestly, I used to be a network manager when wireless first started to become a thing. But, you know, I'm just not willing to trust something that could fail and take my whole system out based on the experience of users. I know lots of people use them, and I know lots of people are super successful with them. But I also know myself, and I would just be so afraid of making that little mistake that's going to ruin everything and having really no way to know ahead of time and constantly be worried about it. So that's why I'm avoiding a sort of overall controller, and specifically the Apex, because of how complex it is. The Hydros, on the other hand, really simple, really simple. And I can think of a lot of ways of using simple to accomplish more complex things than what it's actually designed for, because I've done that before. I used to trick Windows into doing things I wanted it to do that it wasn't designed for, back when I published a magazine, before Word became so easily used to put photos and things and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but I haven't seen enough things about Apex that would make me trust it. And I'm not saying it's not a good product, just that for me, it's not going to be something that I would feel comfortable with. Oh, hey, Ryan. Got to jump off now. Looking forward to seeing how the tank responds. Thanks for letting me come on. Great to listen to you and Alex. We'll be on the next Global. Thanks for stopping by, Ryan. I always appreciate seeing what you got going on over there, and the time you spend. Thank you. Yes, I waited till May 21st to get an Apex because the tedious programming. It's all done through a new revised app, so it's very easy. Exact same concerns. User interface is very polished now. Oh, that's cool. And you know what? I think it's good to let that run for a while, because what happened? Also, Fusion crashes. You're away from home. What do? You get alerts that mean nothing, so you ignore them, and then you get home and find out, oh, they did mean something. Like, I got into a huge argument on Facebook with a guy, a discussion on one of the saltwater groups, and in the end, I proved my point to my satisfaction, but he wanted to keep going on and on and on. And it's like he reached the point where he was saying, yeah, sure, I bet you drive a horse and buggy to work every day, which is a clear sign that someone's run out of a reasonable argument when they start attacking you personally, right? So, yeah. However, I do love the idea of hydros competing. It appeals to me because of the simplicity of it. So we'll see. I still have anxiety about getting it hooked up and running. There have been the odd reports here and there about it losing Wi-Fi connectivity. So that's always an anxiety for me, but those could just be random and issues more with local Wi-Fi than with the actual machine. And yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Island. While I do have an Apex, for the most part, it is monitoring things.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and also coming from, again, professional experience with industrial level controllers that are basically multi-million-dollar Apexes. They, even when you spend that amount of money, they could still fail, especially if someone screws up the programming.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah, this one could screw up the programming. I mean, it's not that I'm, okay. Somebody very politely said, you probably are just intimidated and not smart enough to do it. Yeah, okay, me and my genius level IQ will, we'll go away and think about that. But it isn't that. It's more the anxiety based on experience. So if you're approaching something never having dealt with any issues with something like this before, like remember, I remember when computers were invented. When I was in high school, computers were the size of your house. And you put your punch cards in one end and walk down the hallway to get them out at the other end, and the printout that was dot matrix in a long stream of paper. So I've been through all of that, and I know what can go wrong. And yeah, so I could do it, but I'm not willing to because I'm not convinced I can trust it yet. But Sammy31D says there's a new app, so I'll definitely keep an eye on things and see what people's user experience is. Oh, hey, Lorena, getting dinner. Thanks for the company. Bye, everyone. Bye. Oh, Cue Balls Reef. Hey, Cindy, got room for one more? Yeah, sure. It's not quite 3 o'clock yet, so I still got like a half hour or more. I think Cue Balls, you might have got the email with the link because you're on my list from before. Sammy 31D, 0 programming now. It's all done through what they call task, step by step with pictures within the app. Very user friendly. You can go crazy with programming though. Well,
Yeah.
I have used those little Wi-Fi plugs to, and in tandem with a dosing pump when I was dosing no-pox, because the only place I could put the no-pox in the tank was right beside the skimmer. So I would turn the skimmer off for half an hour after the doser put the no-pox in so that it wouldn't go all crazy and suck all the no-pox and whatever. And so I used a smart plug to shut off the skimmer. Then the doser did its thing. And then the smart plug turned the skimmer on again. I mean, I can figure this out. But I also learned that if you have 6 of those smart plugs in a little tiny cabinet, 3 on each of 2 power bars, there's way too much Wi-Fi going on in there. And I'm convinced that that contributed to the problems I was having with them, where they would just cut out. They would just lose the signal. And that's where an integrated controller makes a lot more sense, such as the Hydros, where you're communicating with one unit that then carries out the tasks, instead of communicating independently with 6 separate units that have to carry out their task. And yes, they have an address, but I think sometimes the signals would just bounce around and it would be like invisible mayhem in there. I don't know. That's how I imagine it. Oh, you didn't? Okay, Cue Balls, can you send me an email? Let's just see.
What you're talking about too is the exact reason that my controller, if my controller were to melt down and die right now, I'll lose my UV sterilizer. I'll lose one return pump that has the UV on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd lose my calcium reactor and my dosing pumps.
Yeah.
But none of the flow pumps, the lighting is on it, but the radions will run on their own.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of my other lighting's all just on regular timers that go on and off on their own.
Yep.
The main return pumps aren't on the Apex. I'll never put my main return pump on a controller. That to me is I would call that a mistake.
Yeah.
And it's just because you don't want to have redundancy, and the same thing too. Why have multiple electrical circuits? The Apex is on one electrical circuit. If I lose that circuit, I'm going to lose everything on it. But I have things diversified on purpose. So if I trip a breaker, I shouldn't lose everything.
Yeah.
Unless it's something really bad, which in that case, it should trip them all if there's that bad of an electrical fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Marcus's Reef says a lot of newer pieces, and this is true, newer pieces of equipment come with smart features anyway. My return pump and Red Sea jars can send alerts to powers out. That's the main thing I'm concerned about. Yeah. And my CG SDC 9s, well, the CG pumps apparently do have a feature that can send you an alert if something's up with the pump. I have to look into that a little more because I heard about that somewhere. I didn't notice that when I was looking through the manual. Yeah, Marcus's Reef, skimmer shuts off automatically at full. Just hesitant to spend a lot more for something else to tell me the same. Everything pretty much runs itself. Like there's 2, oh, hey, ATF in the house. Nice to see you. There's two things going on. I've crossed that threshold into this large system where not only do I have the opportunity to diversify how things are connected for redundancy purposes, but I have to, because one connection isn't going to do it. 2 connections, even a 4-ganger electrical plug isn't going to do it. So with a large system like this, you have to think of ways to cover everything so that, first of all, if something goes wrong, you know where to go and look for the problem. And secondly, that you can spread everything out so that, like Alex was talking about, he might lose one return pump if there's a problem with that circuit, but he'll still have a pump operating. And that's one of the things that's happening with mine. I have a pair of the SDC9s that are going to be mounted externally, and they'll be running in tandem, but they'll be on different circuits just in case something like that happens. So yeah, I have that return. It sends alerts, powers out, temp alerts, and if the water is low, it will shut itself off. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be, mine will be external, but that's the cool thing about these lights too, the Atlantics. You can look on the app and see what temperature they're running at. And in my canopy, I have a couple of USB fans to keep the air circulating because it does get warm up there with all the LED drivers. And of course, heat rises anyway, and the lights are hot. And I can check any time and see what temperatures the two lights are at. And if I see a spike in temperature, then I know that the USB fans aren't working. And it's something that I can check for. So, little things like that are useful too. Yeah, Marcus's Reef sent a couple pictures. One is of his sump. Look at this. Oh, very nice. It's so clean. I like your controller arrangement there on the right. That is really good. Very nice. And then there's another picture, which I will upload now. They've just got. Yeah, it's good, eh? Is that a reef octopus skimmer?
Looks like it. I'll be right back. I gotta go haul a trash bag of 2x4 trimmings out and grab a new bag so it doesn't tear on the way up, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, and here's the other picture. Oh, that looks nice. Marcus, is that a 250? Reefer 250? Very nice. Those light arms, the mount looks nice too. Cool. What lighting have you chose for the main display? I have two Orphec Atlantic V4 Gen 2s. They're panel lights, LEDs, and they're in the center. And around the perimeter, I have 4 LED bars. 2 of them are the Orphec OR2 120s. They're 48-inch. And 2 of them are AliExpress cheapo, just blue bars. They're also 48-inch, and those ones are on the side. And I love the Orphec bar lights so much. That's why I went with Orphec for the panel lights. And the other reason is that the best lights I ever had over a reef tank that I love the most were panel lights, the black box. So much better color blending. They just look really good. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I've got them programmed now, and I won't know, of course, what the heck it's going to look like or what the power will be until I actually have a tank with water in it. But we'll find out. ATF. How are things by you? How's the tanks going? Anyone done this and know if it's successful or can it be done?
What's that?
Oh, it's a Regal. Mark says it's the Regal XL300. Nice. ATF. I'm not sure what your question is, Alan. Anyone done this and know if it's successful or can it be done? Yeah, did I miss it up here maybe? Okay. So were you successful? No tearing?
Yes, I was.
That's good.
I forgot though. I have both cars parked in the garage, so I was kind of like, it's not gonna make it all the way to the trash can right now. But I grabbed like 3 more of my big contractor bags, so hopefully I can organize my pile of 2x4 scrap. And
oh, just a little bigger than the 250. Oh, is it one of the newer ones, Marcus? That's got some stuff like the S or something like that. Sammy showed up late. Is Alex prepping his tank build? Oh yeah, still going.
I think I'm beyond prepping.
Yeah. Just another step in the 1,468 steps left to go.
Hold on now. You're making me count my steps. I think there's more than that.
Yeah. Marcus, 80 gallon setup. Oh, okay, because my 425XL was 112. And I think the 350 is the comparable tank. And it's roughly 75. Cool. And tiles. Can you put in Zoa's mushrooms of all types, put in simple light submersible, run 2 blues and 1 white? Will that grow Zoa's mushrooms? I don't know.
Single lights. Submersible.
Yeah.
Putting out the spectrum, and it has oxygen and the parameters. I mean,
Yeah.
people make reefs in little bases and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always possible.
Yeah.
I think success is going to be kind of eye of the beholder type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Alan, you know, softies will do it. They'll grow in there. You know, in GSP and those little blue clove polyps, both of those I've found invasive. So I've had them and they're nice, but they're really impossible to control once they start taking off. So you have to be really careful with them. Adrian says, blessings, Alex. Yeah, Sammy says, building a house around his tank, LOL.
I don't think I'd still be married if that was the case.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So do you, I guess, Alex, you get your wood as you need it, right?
Yeah, I have the one problem I find is if I buy a lot of extra, which I have, like I did a bit for the standby extra, but the one I can only fit so much into my car. I don't have trucks. I know I get a lot of odd looks when people see me loading lumber into my car. But the problem becomes, especially with, you know, all the lumber is pretty fresh now when it comes in.
Yeah.
It's nice and straight when you get it. Change in temperatures and humidity and everything else, if it's going to warp, it's going to happen pretty quick. So if I need straight lumber, I am trying to use it within a couple of days. If I don't, it will start moving around. And I mean, a little bit of warping is okay. I could deal with that depending on where it's being used. Like the stand legs, they're so short.
Yeah.
You know, it was very rare that I found one of those that would not work for the stand.
Yeah.
And as long as it's not splitting in a critical spot either, that's a no too for me. But just depends on what it is. But I won't buy it in big bulk of lumber.
Yeah.
I was very much considering doing that with my plywood, but I've kind of gone back on that too because, again, I want to inspect each sheet that I'm buying because I'm just picky like that.
No, my husband's been doing that too. He came home with some wood to put the base down because we're getting a shed delivered tomorrow, and it has to be assembled. But so he decided that instead of pouring cement or putting patio stones down because the patio stones can move, he's building a frame out of lumber and putting cross pieces in it. And then he's filling each of the squares or the spaces with gravel. The gravel that's mixed with stone dust. We used it for front landscaping, and that stuff turns into rock once it gets wet. So he's been moving that around and filling those voids, and he needs to get more. And then when when they put the floor down, because the floor is about a half an inch thick, I guess, then he's going to put that down on top of that. And so he wanted really straight lumber that wasn't going to warp, because he doesn't want any pressure on the floor if it twists, midway down a run. So anyway, it's hard. Like he said, he was there when the guy opened up a bundle. He takes the strapping off, cuts the strapping. It's like boing, and the stuff goes all over the place because it's starting to warp already. So it won't even stay stacked because it's already twisting.
Yeah, and I find too, like, well, I've looked at, well, in like a 2x6, once you get to like 10 footers or 12 footers, you could still get them fairly straight. But I don't know, for me at least, like on 2x4s, once you get beyond 8 feet, like I've looked at 10s, 12s. I was looking at some 14 footers for the canopy, and it's just,
yeah,
it's not gonna work. They're just too messed up, and I'm like, I'll put joints on the 8 footers to make them the length I need, which honestly is gonna work out better anyways, because I need to be able to disassemble the canopy.
yeah.
So,
Yep. Alex, Adrian Mitchell is asking if there's any way to get Monties to grow in layers like a flower.
boy, I wish I was good at growing Monties.
Well, I wonder if it has to do with the type, like the species, because I've had some that are encrusters that will plate.
That's it. I mean, the limited time that I've spent growing them, because I just hadn't kept a lot of SPS. I mean, it just seems to me, as long as they're in the right flow conditions and lighting, I mean, they'll start plating out and they'll start giving you that spiral plated look. I've also seen, I also know a few friends that have taken them and like they'll have like 3 different colors of them.
Yep.
And they'll mount them all together on a piece, and then they'll start plating into each other too. But I have never grown any that big before myself.
Yeah.
I'm still a noob at the SPS side of things.
Yeah. Sammy says you need Montipora capricornis, Adrian. Mount it sideways and it'll shelf out. That's worth a try. Well, I don't know if I told you guys before about JP's Reef. I wish I could remember his full name. I got to try and find his channel again. The Montiporas that he had were capricornis, and they formed cup shapes, huge cup shapes. And he put it down to flow, because the flow in his tank came across the top, down the front, and then went back again up under the Monties. So the constant flow pushing up on them, he thinks, is what made them grow like that. They're gorgeous and really different. And Marcus's Reef says higher light at lower time intervals will make them grow a little more vertical. Lower light with longer intervals will grow them wider, from what I hear. Interesting. Yeah, Montiporas are a good beginner SPS to get. And in my experience, flow makes a difference. You get really good polyp extension if you have good flow. Because if detritus and stuff gets sitting on the surface of them, like, you feed your fish, or you get particulates in the water and they settle somewhere in particular and it's on the Monty cap, the skin underneath can get damaged quite easily if stuff sits on there for a few days. They also produce slime to fend off a lot of that stuff. And so between detritus sitting on them and they're trying to produce slime all the time, it affects the polyp extension. So if you get good flow across them to keep the detritus off, in my experience, those have always done the best in that situation.
I like how you say they're a beginner SPS, because all mine are like dying right now.
Yeah, but you know what? People also talk about GSP, and that's true, but they can take a long time to get settled in and get going, right? And some
Yeah.
corals too. They can take a while. I still have pulsing xenia, but not as much as I used to. It's kind of died back.
Yeah, I think a lot of mine thing is it's kind of like I'm in that period of, well, it may or may not make it right now because things are still pretty new.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
but I got a few acros that don't look too bad right now, and I got other ones that are looking kind of crappy, and then the
Are you gonna
softies,
try?
some of them are doing great and some are not. So
Are you gonna try and pick up anything at Reefapalooza? Have you got anything in mind?
maybe if I see a couple bread and butter things, but honestly, like the last load of coral I got, because I got a lot of stuff cheap, uh, I kind of got a hodgepodge of everything, and part of the reason was I was like, well, I kind of want some test subjects to see how things are going to go.
Yeah.
Because everything's been very weird lately. Some things that I'm like, this is like a bulletproof coral that I've had for years. Why is it some of it is not doing well right now?
Yeah.
Um, my my alk consumption's up. It's in a better place. My phosphates are probably at like 0.03, 0.05. Nitrates are still a little low. They're only about 2. But and then I just started dosing some alpha reef, very low amounts of it
Yeah.
for and then I also just fired up my calcium reactor too.
Yeah. It
So
takes time. It's so hard to gauge when the demand is going to be there. You don't want the levels to get too high out of control because it's too hard to get them back down again, especially if they're affecting, the corals are responding by not growing.
well, the other problem too is just going exclusively with calc. I am
Yeah.
not getting the other trace elements that I would from a calcium reactor or like an alpha reef, which is why I fired those up.
Yeah.
And the calc, I actually turned it down a little bit because I bought a CO2 meter, so I can now see my CO2 levels in the house,
Yeah.
which has really opened my eyes up a little bit on that. And um, I'm starting to think more and more that I'm probably going to uh, do something like an HRV.
Right.
Uh, although me being me, I'm probably about 60% convinced I'm going to build it myself.
Right.
And not buy one because I think I could do it cheaper and make something more what I want.
More customized. Yeah. The same as us in our basement. There is a run already installed to put in the bathroom. So why not use it?
Well, I have a bathroom vent there, and I could easily put a damper on it so that
Yep.
I can still push air out of it without backflowing it into the bathroom and still
Yep.
have that vent too. But I have my airline hole already for um, my skimmer, which I could expand out to a 4-inch diameter hole. And I'm starting to think that might be the method I go with.
Yeah.
Because then I started looking at HRV. It's an air heat exchanger with a couple of fans in it.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
I'm like, how is this like $1,000 box?
yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, well, it's a humidistat, I guess. So all you'd need is a humidistat that you could connect to a solenoid to run the fans when they need to run, right?
Well, but see, that's just it though, is that I'm not worried about humidity because I already have my dehumidifier. So
Oh,
I'm
CO2. Yeah.
purely looking at air exchange here. So I mean, I'm going to get uh, dehumidification from it too, which might actually lower how much my dehumidifier runs.
Mm-hmm.
But like even yesterday, it's finally had some nice days here. I opened up the windows upstairs, and the CO2 has been running about 1,000 parts per million in the house, even with my bathroom vent fan on, all the it's like an automatic one in the skimmer going. And then I even ran a little experiment this week, which I didn't really do that much with it, but I was interested is, you know, in my limited understanding of kalkwasser is that they go, well, never leave it open to the air because it reacts with the CO2.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious. I'm like, well, from my understanding, it binds up the carbonic acid, neutralizes it in the water, which is what helps raise your pH. So then I started thinking, I go, well, what if I just took a bunch of kalkwasser and stuck it in a bucket and then stuck an air pump in it? Because then I'm pumping the air from the basement into a bucket of kalkwasser. And I was curious to know if it would lower the CO2 level of the air exiting the bucket.
Yeah.
And it will.
It makes total sense. So what you need to do is buy bulk lime and put it in trays and run gentle airflow over it. And that's your giant CO2 scrubber.
I don't think that will be cost prohibitive. After my little experiment, I used 1 cup of kelp in a couple gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket. I drilled a hole in the top and put a piece of filter sock over it to keep the humidity contained in the bucket, but I put another bucket on top of it, and I put the air stone in and the CO2 meter inside that bucket on top, so the air would have to flow into that second bucket.
Yep.
And for, I don't know, probably about 8 hours, it took the CO2 from 1,000 parts per million and knocked it down to like 550.
Really? Wow. Just in that small space. Huh.
Yeah, inside the bucket. And then like I went to bed, that next morning, I was like, well, it's back up to like 900 and something. But then I agitated the bucket. It's still going, but I took the meter out of it. But it's just more of that. I think the HRV is the easiest solution I could have, is just exporting the air. And now understanding how their heat exchangers work, they're literally just crisscrossing air through a heat exchanger so that it transfers. And I was like, well, that's not that difficult. I mean,
yeah, ours is a hazard. It's hanging in the middle of the basement right beside the furnace. And the number of times I've hit my shoulder on it, so my husband put some pipe wrap around the edges of it, because I guess it has to be there because of the ducting, but our neighbors, theirs is in a different spot, and she actually hits her head on it regularly because it's between one area and another, and it's like you forget about it.
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is, like, I got to do more reading, but I think I'm gonna make a supersized air exchanger, heat exchanger, I should say, so that it will be larger, but I'll kind of be looking at it as, but it'll have more contact time in the heat exchanger.
Yeah.
So it should equalize the temperature better and transfer the heat to the proper direction better.
And then just put an open tray of calcium hydroxide or lime in there on the same principle as why you put baking soda in your refrigerator, right?
Well, hopefully I don't have that problem, but I will have to, though. I will have to make a condensate drain for it, though, because I know that thing is going to sweat like crazy during certain parts of the year. But I'm thinking I'm going to buy 2 variable speed duct fans, the same brand. And I've seen a bunch of them that it's just got kind of like low, medium, high. And then depending on, like, if it's really cold, I'll turn it down to low. If it's really hot, I'll turn it low. But if it's in the middle, I'll just crank that sucker up and see how much I can lower my CO2, because it's about 430 outside, right? When I put the meter out there for hours.
Yeah. Marcus Reef said, I just listened to a stream where Be the Fountain said a friend of hers put a dehumidifier in his house and it helped bring up his pH a tad.
Yeah, my dehumidifier ain't doing that.
No. It's funny. I was just sitting here thinking, Okay, we have reef tanks, and we're talking about ventilation, for heaven's sakes. Like, it's crazy. It's a whole different. It's why I mean the couple of videos that I had talk about the challenges of a big reef tank build, because it's things that when you have your self-contained, even my Red Sea tank, we had to think about certain things, and we wanted to address certain problems and have ways to do stuff. But this is like a whole other level. It's quite a journey, and if people are looking into it and doing research, what we found is sometimes the research brought to light other things we'd never even thought of. You're looking up one thing, and then the person starts talking about some other thing, and we're going, wow, we never even thought of that. So I would say anybody thinking of doing this, spend a couple of months and find everything you can. Think of every system and be totally aware of what can happen. Like we talked about humidity. If you don't address humidity, you're going to have trouble. Yeah.
You'll have more than trouble to deal with. You'll be be living in a biohazard situation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Crazy. So it's kind of cool in the basement now. I'm just listening to the sump run down there. When I got these lights going, I went down there to check on something, and I went, what's going on over there? And I walked over, and sure enough, it's like brilliant light shining down through the hole into the basement. It's like a spotlight on the back area behind the sump. It's funny. Yeah, Sammy D said, Cindy's remote sump inspired me to finally do mine. I'm loving being able to keep the basement window near the sump cracked open, really helping lower CO2 and keep pH up. Yeah, and that's why we put the little window in that utility room, because I will be running an air line from outside to the skimmer at some point. I haven't got to that mental headspace yet. Plus, there's so many wires and cables and controllers and power bars down there right now. I want to wait till all of that stuff is cleaned up so that I can run an air pump that's going to have a nice clear run to the window and not have to be woven through cords. And yeah.
It gets interesting quick with that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, Marcus says, I didn't see how it would about the dehumidifier, but it was interesting. Well, maybe the two aren't related. I don't know. Because I mean, when you think about oxygen, like air, and how high humidity leaves less room for oxygen, then maybe that has something to do with it, because oxygen doesn't displace CO2. It's carbonic acid that binds CO2. So, I don't know.
It could have just been an airflow pattern too.
Yeah, true.
You're causing more air to flow by having something on. It's always possible it was just picking up other air. I mean, in my case, my fish room right now is very closed off. So that's part of the, I thought it was going to be much higher CO2 levels in there than there was.
Yeah.
And it was actually like the rest of the house is trending at about 1,000 anyway. So the ventilation in the house is working, and it's circulating air around. It's not really dumping the CO2 lower. It's still hot. So
yeah.
But even opening my windows up yesterday on the upper floor, this morning my CO2 was only at like 600, so it dropped it by 400 parts per million, and just having that open for a little while. So
yeah, and your meter that you have measures the CO2 in the air.
Yeah,
like they're not submersible.
No, it's an air meter I got.
Yeah.
Because again, I've been experimenting with stuff, and I was curious to know like what's going to work best for me, the other piece was, is it actually making an impact?
Mm-hmm.
So, going down there and looking at it now, it's like, well, technically, yes, I could start increasing my kalkwasser dosing, but at the same time, I'm not getting the trace elements that I need with that.
Yeah.
So that's why I fired up the calcium reactor and I got that going. Because I just figured that's going to be and honestly, the CO2 levels in the basement and the pH really didn't change at all when I fired up the reactor.
Right.
So that was something I was kind of interested to see. Plus, well, when I first put my regulator on the tank too and cracked it down, I opened it up, I could hear the hissing. I'm like, yep, that regulator's not seated all the way. That took a couple times and a little silicone grease to get that good, but
yeah. Yeah, I have that to look forward to at some point, but not right now. I don't need it right now. I'm keeping up with the 2-part with the Reefgrrl from the stuff that comes from Florida.
I gotta say though, it's nice to have the reactor back on there because I feel a lot. I want to see how the corals react in like a couple of weeks, like to a month. It's only been running for, geez, I think this weekend's a week.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I'm kind of looking. I'm like, well, some stuff's looking kind of crappy right now, but you know, it's still new and things need time to balance still.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too about even things like when the tank comes online and I want to do my flow pattern upstairs to give me the light effect that I want. That means that there's not going to be a lot of surface turbulence in the tank. So I have to be sure that I'm going to allow for enough air exchange to keep the fish to keep the oxygen right. And the other thing too is of course the pH, because right now I'm not doing anything except running a skimmer to bump the pH. In my other tank, I had the bubbler and the sump. I do have a little bit of aquachar, and it took me the final step to getting up to 8.3. I do have a bit in there, which is probably helping. So the skimmer and the aquachar, I don't have a bubbler in the sump like I used to. I don't have a line going to outside. I'm not doing bubble scrubbing, like all of those different things that I was doing to help the pH, I'm not doing right now. So between pH and oxygenation and in the main tank up here, I have to find a way to make sure I've got turbulent water somewhere that's going to help with the air exchange and all the stuff that you need to make sure the water's got the proper balance of oxygen. So it's going to be an interesting challenge because I might find that I might not be able to do what I want to do with the flow if I can't get enough surface movement. I don't know.
The only thing I would say though is that when you get your main display online, is that water going down the drain,
yeah,
it is going to get tumbled all over the place, and that is going to be a huge amount of gas exchange there.
Yep.
So
that's
just
the part I
because
thought about. Yep.
Yeah, just because it's not churning that way in the main display, it's still getting fed water that's just gone through that. So I don't think that's going to be a major thing.
Yeah, it's three drains, 1.5 inches. So that should be good.
Yeah, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll find out if I ever get a tank.
Well, we could always play the let's see what type of materials you could do to make your own. You just start.
Hey, at this point, like after watching what you've done, what the heck? 4 glass.
I was going to say, I could teach how to make a pond liner tank. They work.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well, it is what it is, right? Oh my God, and it's 3:30. How do you like that? So I think I've come to the end of what I can do today, and just say thank you to everybody who came and hung out, and thank you, Alex. Always great to see what you're doing. And I really enjoyed the discussion about all of this because it always makes me think, and now I want to go and look some stuff up. And I guess at this point, we'll see you guys again in a month or 4 weeks, whatever the last Sunday of October. That'll be the next live stream, unless I decide to pick up a random sometime on a Saturday night, depending on what else is going on. And yeah, so it's been fun. Thanks to Ryan for coming in and showing us his millies. And Alex, I hope you have a great time at Reefapalooza.
I'm planning to.
Yep. See what's new there. I would go back maybe in 2023. Yeah. All right. See you guys later. And everybody take care of yourselves. Bye.
Bye.